Good morning, or at least that's what I would have said when I intended to start this, but then it took like 4 hours to get to it for a bunch of not fun reasons. Whatever! Hi, I'm Fen. This is Phenomon. Yeah, there's nothing on this channel, because this is my Digimon exclusive channel that I started and then haven't actually done anything with for a hot minute. Well, welcome! We're here to do a deck profile on my extremely goofy Grandis list. It's not that goofy, it's actually pretty straightforward. So let's just jump right on in. I'm doing this because I just managed to win my local store championships with this deck list. Same deck list, I took 86th in Core TCG's Regional on August 20th, and I believe 21st at Top Cuts Regional on the 13th, though I believe there were some minor deck tweaks made between the 13th and the 20th. I've pretty heavily based this list off of Nick D'Angelo's 6th place list from the Gen Con webcam tournament on the 7th of August. Nick was running the one copy of Lalamon as well as Arbormons and the single copy of BT1 Okuwamon, which I tested and I just didn't like a bunch of them. So instead, here's what I've got. We've still got the Yokomon egg because while I really do not like the OTK meta, unfortunately, the Yokomon is kind of necessary to deal with the potential threat of Alphamons in security. If Alphamon weren't such a prolific deck, I would probably replace these with Gummimons or Pinamons. The problem being, because Alphamon is everywhere, Alphamon Oryukin is the only Digimon besides Imperial Dramon Paladin mode that no one runs. Grandis can't swing over in security. So the Yokomons are here. Yeah, I'd like to replace them with something else, but... then I've got Goblimon because worst case, actually not even worst case, best case, Goblimon is great for memory choking. The 2 memory play cost is delightful. 0 cost to Evo is also fine. 3k, so it can also swing over some things. It doesn't matter that much, but occasionally it does. But frankly, I think the 2 play cost is more important, both because of the memory choke and because if I have a Mimi in play, it means I can play a Goblimon and then evolve pretty much anything onto the Goblimon and either keep control of memory because I went into a Weedmon or a Kabuterimon, or continue to choke the opponent by going into a Snimon. Plus, it means I don't need to search, because, let's be honest here, one of the biggest issues with Grandis is that its search is kind of bad. We don't have a ton of it, and one of the primary searchers, Kokuwamon X Antibody, we'll get to you in a minute, unfortunately bottom decks a bunch of really vital cards for the deck. So I think the Goblimon just as a card draw source is really useful in this. Then we've got the 2 Terriermons. Nick D'Angelo's list was actually running 3 of these and a Lalamon. I cut one of the Terriermons and the Lalamon for something a little bit later on. I still think it's very good because, yeah, sure, Alphamon can blow up Terriermon really easy, but it's something that they have to commit to, and up until that point, it means the Terrier can do stuff like eat any Dorumon triggers, Dorumon's evolution effect. It shuts down Hammer Spark, Mem Boosts, Ice Wall Insecurity. It's just good, honestly. Then we've got the 4 Kokuwamons. Again, I like the idea of their search, but the problem being it can only hit machines and insects, and annoyingly, some of our best cards are... well, most of our good cards are insects, but it can't hit stuff like Weedmon, which is our ideal level 4 for this deck. Also, for some reason, MetalKabuterimon, and I even thought about running Beetlemon, but both of them, and Arbormon, which Nick's list was running, are cyborgs for some reason instead of machine or insect, the non-committal. Then I've got the 4 copies of Palmon because, I mean, look, worst case, it Digiburst's a way to give jamming. It's fine. It's good. Like, there's literally no problem with it. Yes, in a lot of cases, it actually does the exact same thing that Yokomon does, which is make sure you don't die to swinging into an Alphamon or you can in security. But at the same time, you can also Digiburst the Palmon away to give something else jamming, so... Honestly, if we had Promo Pulsemon, I'd probably end up replacing the Palmons with it. but until such a time as that happens, not gonna work. Then I've got the 2 copies of Tentomon. I actually tried running EX1 Tentomon here because I like the idea of the reduced evolution cost, but again, that only really works if you're also pushing out more aggressively, and Yoko doesn't really enable that. Maybe if we had Gummimon or Pinamon as an egg, and if the format was a tiny bit slower and not entirely OTK focused, that might be viable, but until that's a thing, So Tentomon's here mostly just as a slightly more generic searcher. Yeah, they still bottom deck Mimi, Green Mem Boost, and X Antibody, but at least they don't bottom deck the Weedmon, and they only reveal the top card, so it's a little bit more workable. You don't have to worry about bottom decking 3 or 2 extra cards. So it's what I'm going with. Then we've got the MetalKabuterimon. Like I said, I know the list that I said I'm basing this off of, Nick D'Angelo's list was running the 2 Arbormons, and yeah, it's cheaper to get into consistently, but I personally like MetalKabuterimon because worst case, sure, you have to Evo for 3, but it's another way to control a little bit of your memory gain, so you can kind of screw with your opponent's memory a little bit. But more importantly for me, it can Evo onto a champion for 1, meaning that we can build our stacks a little bit higher and avoid having to Digiburst away an Okuwamon promo. And hey, absolute worst case, we've got 2 of them, so it means we can Evo 1 onto a Mimi, then Evo another one onto it to still get the suspension effect. I've got the 3 Kabuterimons here because, look, again, it Evos for 1, and its blocker, sure, it's not the best blocker, but I personally tend to have a rough time against Imperialdramon, so this gives me at least one thing to prevent XVmon from swinging in too aggressively. Speaking of Imperialdramon, I've also got the 2 Snimons. These are not my favorite card personally, but I don't think there's a lot of other options because I don't want to run option cards because that makes all of my other searching a little bit worse. And at the very least, it's an insect. It might be in my security. It never is for me personally, but sometimes for other people it might be in security. The on-play suspend is great. There's literally no problem with it. So sure, yes, it's painful if you have to hard drop it for 6. That's just, no. It's just unpleasant. No one likes it. That's okay. But it also Evos for 2, so again, hard play a Goblimon, Evo into a Snimon, and assuming you've got a Mimi in play, you've memory choked the opponent to 1. It's still good. I did test with the 1 BT1 Okuwamon, just because that inheritable is really nice, gaining the 1 extra memory, especially because it's not once per turn, but from my personal experience, I didn't need it that much. It ruined the consistency because it's still a 7-drop if it's what I have in hand, and I'd much rather have to hard drop a Weedmon or, well, mostly just a Weedmon, let's be honest here, because I really would rather not have to drop a Kabuterimon, a MetalKabuterimon, or a Snimon for 6. Then we've got the classic 4 and 4 for both promo Okuwamon and Okuwamon X Antibody. Look, if you're running Grandis, you already know this is how this is. You've got 4 promo, 4 X Antibody, 4 Grandis, 4 promo GrandKuwagamon as well. Yeah, I mean, none of those are going to be different here because I'm not really rocking the boat with it. Then we've got the 4 Mimi. Yes, I know some folks prefer Davis because he's a better searcher. My innate issues with Davis are, again, I actually think a lot of the problem with this deck is that we don't want to search. We instead want to be focusing on card draw. Yeah, it sounds like Mimi's not great for that, but drop a Mimi, sure you pass turn, but that means next turn you're going to be at 3. If you somehow, absolute worst case, have to hard drop another Mimi, still memory screwing the opponent. It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And she means that once you start getting into your level 5s, even if you have to hard play them, which I've done more than I'd like to admit, you're able to start performing multiple breeding actions. In fact, you can go look at Primitive's commentary video of the store championship that I won and see that that's actually how I won one of the matches, I believe game 2, because I swung in with Grandis for 2 checks, swung with the Terriermon that I'd pushed out that turn, used 1 Mimi to form a breeding action to hatch an egg, evoed it into something, suspended the other Mimi to push out. Meanwhile, Davis can't do that. All Davis does is enter play, search the top 3, only hit 1 target, bottom deck the other 2, and then he just sits there. And if you're running Davis and you want to make sure that you can secure lethal with hybrids, you also have to be running blue hybrids, who are now a functional dead end for all of your evolution lines too. So, Mimi. I've got the 4 green memory boost because, look, we don't want to run that many options, so we're going to run the option that lets us gain memory and that lets me search, and unlike Kokuwamon, can do stuff like hit Weedmon and MetalKabuterimon if I need them. And then because I have really weird luck, that means I usually have Grandis in my opening hand no matter what I do, I run a single copy of X Antibody. Mostly because, while I often have a Grandis in hand, I very rarely have a GrandKuwaga in hand. So I try and lean into the fact that the way you get the OTK is by going into GrandKuwaga, digibursting everything away, and then start swinging like a madwoman in my case, with a Grandis at 16k to maybe probably 18k beat stick, maybe with jamming. That doesn't change the fact that, absolute worst case, going into Grandis with an X Antibody and sources without a GrandKuwaga means you still have a 16k beat stick that can swing twice a turn. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think folks are a little bit underestimating that power, especially because on that end of attack trigger, you get to suspend something. So if you still have the Okuwamon promo in sources, you can also kill it, which is honestly probably what won me a whole bunch of my game. During the store championship, I had, we only had 4 rounds, but 16 players, so your standard expectation. First game was up against a Masta, who admittedly I think is running a weird style that I don't necessarily think is the best, but it means that when Masta does all of their setup, because they have to hard play a Gatomon to get most of their setup going, they pass Grandis players a ton of memory, which means if our hand is working, a lot of the time we get to go, cool, you gave me 5 memory, I'm going to hatch an egg, evo into a rookie, evo into any of my champions without passing turn, probably evo into a promo Okuwamon if I've got it in hand, worst case an Okuwamon X Antibody, and then do something to try and memory choke you. And that's just good. Next one was actually up against Red Hybrid, who, it's a little bit of a harder match just because, again, like Grandis itself, Red Hybrid doesn't really push out, so there's not as much to interact with, but they do have to drop onto the field a whole bunch of search rookies, which give us a whole ton of targets for suspending, which, frankly, kind of reinforces the whole, I don't think Grandis should be hiding in security as much as it probably wants to. Hiding in raising as much as it probably wants to. Pushing out at level 5 so that you can go into an Okuwamon X Antibody, suspend a search rookie, and swing with piercing through it if you can help it. And yeah, sure, there's always the chance that, oh no, you hit a Ancient Greymon in security. You know what happens if you hit an Ancient Greymon in security? The Red Hybrid player doesn't have that Ancient Greymon. Who cares? Yeah, oh no, we lost a stack. You're green, we're aggro, you're gonna lose stacks no matter what, so might as well try and get some value out of it, kill a thing, remove a security card, and they're red. They don't have any recursion. Who cares? And then second to last game was up against Melga, which, again, I think Grandis actually has a really good matchup against Melga, because, well, Melga has better search. Melga runs into the issue where they can't search for any of their rookies. At the very least, we can. I mean, they can with, like, Green Memboost, and Cool Guy can hit Goblimon X Antibody, but that's 1 out of their usual 12. Meanwhile, Kokuwamon can hit Kokuwamon, and can hit Tentomon. Green Memboost can hit all of them, but meh. So we just have a little bit more consistency than they do, and because they're having to swing in early with their level 5s, they have to worry about our very large boys, killing them in security, stripping their battle protection. They also have to worry about the Snimon, because Snimon can, cool, I fight you, so worst case if they have to swing with Garuru, yes, that has happened. Snimon wins that against most Garurumons. enters play, suspends something, and remember that pretty much all of the additional attacks that Melga gets to do are based off of unsuspending before the attack hits. So cool, suspended, they don't get another attack. And oh no, you went into Wirguru X and bounced the Snimon to my hand. Cool, now I have a champ that I can evo for 2. It's not that big a deal. My final match, which you can already see and probably did see over on Primitive's channel, was against Mastamon, who... Yeah, okay, I feel bad about this, but Joey bricked hard. I mean, you can see this in Game 1 especially, when I swung into security with a really early Grandis swing. I think I hit 1 or 2 Mastamon and then hit a Chaos Degradation. And later, when I started checking more security, turned out that there were 3 of his 4 Mastamon were in security, so that was just very painful. And then in Game 2, went for a little bit more of, well, okay, well, you go first so that you set the memory tempo so that I don't have to worry about giving you 5 memory, because that was what happened in Game 1. And it turns out Grandis doesn't really care about that either, because, oh cool, I'm going first, evo into a rookie, evo into a Kabuterimon or a Weedmon, and set you to 1? You're still a Mastamon, you still probably gonna give me a bunch of memory, because even if you're just going into Gotamon in Raising, that's still giving me 2 if I'm setting you to 1, which means I can go into an Okuwamon promo for 3, once again, setting you to 1. So it's also kind of why I don't love BT1 Okuwamon, because it actually makes it harder and weirder to memory screw your opponent. Yeah, I honestly think Grandis has a really good game against a lot of decks. The main issue with it is mostly just that it bricks hard when it doesn't want to run. And sometimes, especially for me, it just goes, how about I don't give you this level today? And it's not pleasant. But when it works, it really works. So if you want to see all the rest of the stuff that I do, because yes, technically this is Phenomon, which is my Digimon exclusive channel, you can find all the rest of the stuff that we do over at beacons.ai/layeroflore, because you can see all of it here. The secret tech is just to type Layer of Lore into your preferred search engine, and pretty much all of it is me. I stream over at twitch.tv/fenoflore, that's PHENN of lore. Tweet at Layer of Lore, Patreon, and coffee.com/Layer of Lore. You can find all of our Twitch VODs over on youtube.com/Layer of Lore. Well, most of them. I'm getting caught up. There's a very large backlog. Anyway, thank you very much to all of our amazing supporters for supporting us here on YouTube, as well as over on, like I said, patreon.com/Layer of Lore and coffee.com/Layer of Lore. Thank you to Lord Inkdeath, aka April, Manfred, Fragile Paper, Pinball Witch, and Yalk. If you want to see the full deck list, I've got a write-up over on layeroflore.com, as well as a digimoncard.dev link in the description. I'm sorry, I just don't like them. So I generally use digimoncard.app, but their sharing system's a little weirder, and I know they're not as common, so I think that's pretty much it, though. If you also want to see any of the, frankly, absurd number of write-ups that I've been trying to get done, covering, well, in theory, all of the top 16s from the past couple of major events, though in practice it tends to be a little bit closer to top 8s, because something horrible happens every time I start to try and write about a top 16. You can find those over at layeroflore.com as well. Have a great time, and I'll see you for the next thing I do here. Who knows what the hell that'll be? I don't. I come up with this shit as I go on. Whatever. Bye. Where's the button? I've lost the button. There it is.